right, let me finish page 3. I'm going to start with 14 and 15. I went over these in class, but I'll do it again. First of all, make sure you realize that is just the interval where telling you where theta is. So I give you a piece of information. I tell you the sine is equal to -4/9, and theta is between here. You're finding the cosine of 2 theta. In this problem, I tell you the cosine of theta is 3/7 in this interval, and you're looking for the cosine of theta over 2. So first of all, just look at what you're trying to find. I'm trying to find the cosine of theta over 2, or cosine of 2 theta on the first one. So I go to my double angle formulas, and again, I have 3 choices. I can use any of those 3, but notice on here I was given the sine. So if I know what the sine of theta is, I definitely want to use this one. Now, if you didn't want to use this one, let's say you wanted to use this one, you could figure out what the cosine of theta is. If you know the sine of theta is this, you can use the formula sine squared plus cosine squared is equal to 1, and you could definitely plug in the sine is -4/9, and you could solve for cosine. So if you needed to know the cosine, you could find it. But why do that if you have a formula that deals with sine? So I'm just going to plug in 1 minus 2 sine squared cosine of 2 theta is equal to 1 minus 2 sine squared of theta. So if I know the sine of theta is -4/9, all that means is I'm going to take this. Since the sine of theta is equal to this number, I'm going to take the sine of theta and replace it with -4/9. So I have 1 minus 2 times -4/9 squared, because it says I want to take the sine squared. That's all you're doing, is you're plugging -4/9 in for sine into your formula. And now we just need to simplify it. 1 minus 2 times 16 over 81. I need to multiply 2 times that to get 32 over 81. And then to add them, you need to get a common denominator. So 1 is just 81 over 81. So I get 49 over 81. And that's it. That's all I have to do. So just realize this was just giving you where the angle was. They gave you one of the trig values. You have to decide which one of the sine of 2 thetas you wanted to use, and you're just plugging it in. So 15 is similar to that, except for now when you do cosine of a half angle, remember we have that plus or minus we have to deal with. So we are going to have to talk about, oh, what is it? Plus a positive answer or a negative answer? But really, again, we're just plugging it in. 1 plus the cosine over 2. So the cosine of theta over 2 is going to equal plus or minus. I'll leave it plus or minus right now. We'll talk about that later. 1 plus the cosine of theta over 2. And again, the cosine of theta they gave me. All I'm going to do is plug that in. It's 3/7. So I get plus or minus the square root of 1 plus 3/7 all over 2. So I'm just replacing the cosine of theta with 3/7. I would probably multiply by 7 over 7. So I get 7 plus 3 over 14. I have to take that times 7, that times 7, and that times 7. So I get 10 over 14, which reduces to 5/7, which we can rationalize that denominator. Because remember, this is really like having square root of 5 over the square root of 7. That's what this means. And so I need to rationalize the denominator. So I get either a positive or a negative, square root of 35 over 7. So we have to go back to this plus or minus. I've kind of been ignoring that. We just went through and said, all right, let's plug in the cosine of theta, let's simplify it, and we get this. But now we have to decide, is it a positive or is it a negative? So if theta is between 3 pi over 4 and 2 pi, it's somewhere here, we have to decide what is cosine of theta over 2. So where is theta over 2? So the easiest way to do that is really to start with your inequality and say, all right, if I want to know where this angle is, if I took it and cut it in half, where does it end up? All I really need to do is take this and divide all 3 parts of that by 2, so that I get theta over 2 in the middle. Theta over 2 is going to equal pi, or be less than pi, greater than, this becomes 3 pi over 4. So half of theta is going to be in the second quadrant, somewhere between 3 pi over 4 and pi, somewhere in that region right there. So if that's where theta over 2 is, the cosine of theta over 2, if I'm in that quadrant, is going to be negative, so I know I have to use the negative sign. So it is negative square root of 35 over 7. Okay, so that plus or minus, you always have to remember, at some point in the problem, you got to figure out what it is. You're looking to ask yourself, what do you know about cosine of theta over 2? Is it positive or is it negative? In this case, since theta is here, half of theta would be over here, so the cosine is negative. All right, now I want to try to get to this one, at least this one solving. Most of you said solving triangles is easy, but I do want to talk about this one because of them deciding if there's more than one answer. So when you go to set this up, some people like to draw pictures, which is fine. You don't have to. But this is 36 degrees. Side A is 8. Side B is 13. All right, you don't need that picture if you don't want to. You do know that because you have opposites, you can use law of sines. So the sine of 36 is to 8, as the sine of angle B is to 13. Anytime you use the law of sines to find an angle to get started, if you're using law of sines and you have to find an angle, there possibly could be two solutions. So use your calculator, cross multiply. You're going to take 13 times the sine of 36 equals 8 sine B. You're going to divide by 8. You don't have to show me these steps if you're okay with doing it without showing me the steps. But when you divide by 8, I don't know what you get. You get the sine of something, but then do second sine. And when I did that, I got an answer of B being 72.8. So first of all, the calculator gives me that answer. What you have to know is that if B happens to be obtuse, I can't tell from my picture because it's opposite of 13, that's opposite of 8. So I don't know if B is obtuse. If it is obtuse, that's not the answer the calculator will give me. So I need to say, okay, there might be another possible answer. Think of the unit circle. If I know that, I have a reference angle of 72.8, there's also an obtuse angle over here starting in standard position that also has that same sign. So if I take 180, subtract 72.8, I get B could be 107.2. So it's just the supplement to that. Take 180 and subtract the angle you got. This only has to be done when you're solving the angle first. And the first thing you have to do is find an angle using law of sines. All right, now what I do is I just cover that up and I finish this one. I say, okay, let's ignore the second solution. If B is 72.8, I take 72.8 plus 36, subtract from 180, I get C is 71.2. And then I have to find side C, so I'm going to say sine of 36 is to 8, as the sine of 71.2 is to C. And then I cross multiply to find that, and I got C to be 12.88. So that's one solution. That if B is this, that the calculator gave me, that would mean C has to be this, and then with law of sines, little c or side C would have to be 12.88. All right, now I go to the second possible solution and say, okay, what if B were 108? Then if I take, or 107.2, sorry, if I take 107.2, add it to the 36 that I had, subtract from 180, I get C would be 36.8 degrees. And that works. So then again, I set up sine of 36 is to 8, as the sine of this angle C is to side C. Cross multiply, and I get C is 8.15. So this one does have two solutions. Not all of them have two solutions, so please on the test don't go through and just make everyone have two solutions. It's only if you use the law of sines first to find that first angle, you have to consider the supplement to that. Finish this one, and then decide if this one works. Now if this one would have been, let's say, 150, if the supplement was, if this was 30 and this was 150, then 150 plus 36 is already too big. You know that it wouldn't work. You have to consider it. And if you get an angle that works here, then you got to keep going and get your second solution. So when I go to grade this, I'm going to be looking, do you have that set up? Did you find angle B? Did you find the second solution to B? Did you finish this one and show your work to find side C? And then did you find angle C here, show your work to get C? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 points that would be worth. You would lose 4 of the 9 points if you don't find the second solution. Okay, so it is kind of important that you know when to use that second solution. Okay, That's really the only other thing I guess I could quick mention on the back, just to make sure you're okay with this one. Make sure you realize on this one, if you're going to use A equals 1/2 AB sine C, you have to have the two sides and you have to have the angle between them. So to get the angle between them, you're going to have to use law of sines. You're going to have to say the sine of 78 is to 40 as the sine of, I'll call this angle B up here, angle B is to 30. You're going to have to cross multiply, solve for B. Once you have angle B, then you subtract from 180 to get this angle. Then you can find the area by taking 1/2 times 30 times 40 times the sine of whatever that angle is. But that one has a little bit more work to it. The rest of them are pretty straightforward.